Okay, we are now recording. Thank you very much for logging on here today and joining us. We have one person joining us by phone. Not sure who that is, but it's great to see those of you that are on that were able to make it. So today is fairly informal. This is just my opportunity to introduce this brand new opportunity that the Center for Professional Personnel Development is providing for ag education in Pennsylvania. And I just wanted to highlight a couple key points and address some things that may not be in the eligibility and rules document that you hopefully have had a chance to look through. And then most importantly, since this is brand new, I'm sure there's some questions out there. So the main part of today, I want to be your opportunity to ask any questions that you have had or that perhaps your students have brought up that might be interested in participating in this. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my screen. I have the eligibility and rules document pulled up. Can everybody see that? Okay, if anybody is not seeing that, basically, this is pretty self-explanatory, but for those that maybe didn't get a chance to look at this, our main purpose for doing this is to give students the option to utilize their creativity and innovative side, and also apply some of the scientific principles that they may be learning in your class or other classes throughout the school, coupled with the agri-science concepts that you are probably going over in your horticulture classes as far as pest management, hot ag issues right now. Obviously, the spotted lanternfly is a huge ag issues topic right now in the state of Pennsylvania, major threat. And I'm really glad to see a lot of you from around the state, and even the teams that have already completed their intent to participate are very scattered from around Pennsylvania. This is not just a southeastern PA issue. This truly is an agri-science and industry issue that the entire state's agricultural industry needs to care about, because unfortunately it is an issue that's spreading. We have had numerous cases of spotted lanternfly confirmed in Center County. So it is moving its way across the state, and if it's not in your neighborhood yet, it most likely will be indefinitely. So the purpose of this is to give students a realistic, focused challenge project to address and really put the learning, the ownership of learning in their hands. And this mimics a lot of the types of skills that industry is saying that it seeks in job candidates through various companies around the state and the country, for that matter, seeking individuals that can work as a team, seeking individuals that can move through the problem-solving model. So that's just a little bit of the background behind the purpose of this program. The goal, obviously, is for them to work together. I did leave it open so that if a student really wants to do this on their own, they do have that option, but we do highly encourage students to work as teams. Again, mimicking the real world of the 21st century workforce, where A lot of times companies do have teams that work together, pulling together everybody's strengths and expertise. And this is a scenario that really mimics that real world environment. So teams addressing this year's challenge prompt, which we'll get to in a second, work collaboratively and come up with a working prototype. The end goal and the end entry that your teams should be bringing and submitting should be a physical object, an actual machine or apparatus that addresses the need and does what the challenge prompt asks students to do, which is to catch and destroy the lanternfly in its various stages. So we don't want pictures of it, or we do want three-dimensional representations of it, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the end product that students are turning in is not a picture of something, it's an actual physical working device. And hopefully they're working collaboratively to do that, and hopefully working cross-discipline to do that. Perhaps pulling in some technology education students on their team, working within science classes and cross-curricularly. So this is a program that I hope will sort of take off, and that we will be able to offer it year after year after year. And it is my intent, based on other similar STEM challenges that are happening throughout the country, most of which, specifically the ones that I've seen, allow students to kind of come up with their own product and their own need. But since this is the first year, I wanted to focus, especially my focus, in pulling this all together, to not be chasing down experts and faculty and industry folks from 8 million different disciplines to effectively be able to evaluate these end projects. I wanted the focus to be on keeping the process simplified, keeping the process sound, and not getting wrapped up in the nitty-gritty of finding a whole bazillion different people from different disciplines. So for the first year here, we're all focusing on the same area, so to speak, and the same challenge, and that's listed in the rules and eligibility sheet here, to design and build a device. Okay, now that's a very vague and broad term, and we'll talk about specifications and sizes here in a second, but this device can be marketable to homeowners and or commercial agricultural commodity producers, and the device needs to effectively capture and destroy either adult lanternflies, lanternfly egg masses, or there's 4 instar stages of the lanternfly, and the apparatus or device can be designed to specifically target any of those 4 life stages. And again, one of the things I like about this is the average high school student may not know what the 4 instar stages of a lanternfly are, and that prompts them to have to do a little bit of research on the topic, which they will hopefully be doing regardless of which of those life stages they are designing for. Okay, so pretty simple prompt: catch and kill lanternflies. But we're going to talk about some of the regulations as to how they can do that as part of this challenge in a second. So again, we are encouraging students to work as a team. A team may consist of a single individual. It may be a team of 2 students, it could be a team of 3 students, it could be a team of 4, but we don't want any more than 4, because I don't think that every member of the team, once you get beyond 4, I don't know that every member of the team is going to necessarily have the inclusivity and really get to do as much as I want each student to be able to do for this project. So we're keeping it at teams of 4 or less. This is a change right here. I am opening it up to, because we do have some middle school programs throughout the state. And I actually thought that I had changed that already, but it is open from 7th through 12th grade. So you could have anywhere from your middle schoolers all the way up to seniors. And again, one of the neat opportunities of a project like this is if you can somehow intermingle those age groups and get some of the youngsters learning and working with, learning from and working with some of your older students. So this Friday, a pretty big deadline and a pretty big date, December 21st. I'd like to have everybody that intends on participating, everybody that intends on putting a team into this challenge program, to complete the Google form that is at that tiny URL link. And it's a very, very quick and easy form to fill out. Shouldn't take you any more than 5 minutes tops. And that is just simply so that from a budgetary standpoint, that I can plan, and we'll talk about the funds that are available through this project in a second. But seeing as though we are going to make funding available for startup fees and startup materials and tools and equipment for this challenge, it's just mainly to let me see how much I have to spread that money around. And also from a logistical standpoint of what kind of space is going to be needed to store these projects when they are entered at state convention in June. We do have a space identified already for that, but I just need to make sure that we're going to have enough space depending on how many teams want to do this. You can have as many teams enter from your school as you want. However, a student can only count as being a member of one team. We don't want a student being on the blue team, the red team, and the yellow team, and hoping that one of those teams wins. One team per student, but you can enter as many as you like. Okay. All entries must be the original work of the team and individual. We are encouraging innovation, and innovation is coming up with a new or untested or unthought of idea or solution to a problem. And we don't want somebody just going out and copying the design of an existing device. So this should be original thought and original design that these teams are coming up with. The official start date that your teams can start rolling up their sleeves and getting to work is January 14th. And I will be set. And again, that's another big reason that I need to know who is intending to do this and who is raising their hand and saying, yes, we're going to participate, because I will contact those teams directly when they can officially begin. Now, the reality of it is how can I police if students are already starting to work together and come up with ideas and everything else? I can't. But just to kind of keep the playing field somewhat leveled, official start date of this is going to be January 14th, shortly after we start our new year. And all entries are going to come up here to University Park during Activities Week and State Convention, June 11th through the 13th. I would like for the evaluation of them to occur on Wednesday afternoon, June 12th, but I don't have that pinned down exactly yet and set in stone. That afternoon tends to have a little bit of a lull. So as a chance to fill that time void, I'm looking at having these these entries be evaluated on June 12th in the afternoon, but that's not quite set in stone yet. I'm working with Mr. Brammer as well as our sorry, I'm reading Dr. Foster's message. As to when the best time in activities week would be the best time to judge these projects. So what we're going to do is everybody brings their prototype to activities week and national or state convention, and we will identify 5 semifinalists that will have the opportunity to take the feedback given to them by the evaluators, and take that feedback, take their prototypes, and apply that feedback to try to make their prototype even better. And then the finalists will be evaluated and selected as part of National Teach Ag Day on September 19th of 2019. So again, those students will need to come up to University Park with their prototype on that day. So I think that's a really neat way to celebrate Teach Ag Day, and to get as many students as possible up here to partake in that celebration. So a little note on the design prompt. As the design prompt states, they should be designing a device marketable to either homeowners or commercial agricultural commodity producers. And on that note, if the end result of what they're actually designing is intended to be like placed in a vineyard, a commercial vineyard, or in an orchard, it's going to be fairly large. So if the end result is, let's say, for example, the size of a hay wagon, we don't want you to pull something the size of a hay wagon up to University Park for evaluation. So it is acceptable to design something that in real life, when it's actually being used, can be fairly substantial in size, but for the challenge program's purposes, you can scale that real life design down to something that might occupy a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot volume of space. I did not put any restrictions on the size of this, but do keep in mind and relate this information to your students that we do intend to display these prototypes on a tabletop or at the very least inside of a building. So it needs to be something that's easily transported, A, for you to even get it here, and B, so that we can get inside of a building and have on display and be evaluated by our expert judges. So relay that point to your students that if they're going to focus on the commercial end of things, they can design something but scale it down. It should still work and operate in the same manner, but just make it smaller so that it can fit on a tabletop or in the floor inside of a building here on campus for state convention. Okay. So these are kind of the special points that I really wanted to highlight for folks and drive home. Students are required to submit with their prototype a 3D representation, okay? And that might be a red flag to some folks, saying, well, I don't have software that my students can use to create a 3D representation. We do not want pencil and paper, graph paper drawn representations and plans for these. There's various three-dimensional design software or venues out there. And I am more than happy to, and some of them are free. And I'm more than happy to work with you on an individual basis if need be, or if there's a large demand. This is kind of my way of breaking this into PA. I'd be more than happy to do a professional development webinar, and if the demand's even high enough, I'd be more than happy to put on a face-to-face professional development workshop on, for say, Google SketchUp. It's not called Google SketchUp anymore. I think it's called Trimble SketchUp. But irregardless, that's a free software that anybody can get, anybody can use with an internet connection. So you don't have to go purchase. So don't misread this bullet point as I need to go purchase and find 3D drafting software for my students. Absolutely not. If your school, such as your technology education program, uses three-dimensional drafting software such as SolidWorks already, or AutoCAD, you can do 3D in as well. I prefer that people don't use AutoCAD, but if that's what you got, that's what you got. But if you would like more instruction and help in this 3D representation design, I would be more than happy to either work collectively as a group with you or individually as the need arises. Also, a 1 to 2 page typed narrative explaining, the process that your team went through in coming up with their prototype design. It does not need to be a doctoral dissertation, just a 1 to 2 page narrative forcing students to reflect on the process that they went through. Hopefully, there's going to be language in that narrative saying, well, we researched the problem. We learned about the spotted lanternfly. We learned about the various life stages of a spotted lanternfly. And after learning this, we collectively thought and discussed and thought that focusing on the egg masses was the best way of combating this pest. And based on X, Y, and Z about the egg masses, this is how we came up with our design. So 1 to 2 pages typed explaining the process that they went through to get to their end result, just kind of forcing them to reflect on this process. So it's not just, let's slap something together that works and see how it does. I want them to reflect on this process that they go through. So that is a requirement. They will not get evaluated if they do not have a 3D design of their prototype. Now, that is a requirement. An encouragement is, if at all possible, and it makes the most sense and will produce the nicest product, if they can utilize 3D printing / prototyping, because a 3D printer is a 3D prototyper, if they can incorporate 3D printing to produce either some of their parts or some of the components of their prototype, or all of it for that matter, great. That's what this challenge program is intended to do. Drive students to utilize the technologies that the world needs them to be prepared with. So that's not a requirement, because I understand that not every school has a 3D printer. Not everybody's comfortable and knows how to utilize the 3D printer. Again, I am here as a resource to help you with that component. But for this first year, that's not a requirement, but I do highly, highly encourage your teams to utilize that technology if at all possible. So now on to some safety items. And I have worked in conjunction with Penn State Extension folks that focus and work exclusively on the spotted lanternfly topic. I certainly, common sense tells you I certainly don't want anybody dragging hazardous or flammable substances along with them up here for state convention, including pesticides. Anything that's been designated as a hazardous chemical or flammable, for that matter. Their design can incorporate, and this is, again, I'm not an expert in spotted lanternflies, but this is coming from my spotted lanternfly folks that I've been working with, and again, this is addressing a real world issue in the traps that have already been designed and kind of tested and experimented with. They do utilize kill strips in these things, and those kill strips do contain chemicals that could be potentially hazardous. So having that kill strip component or some way of neutralizing the spotted lanternfly once they have been trapped is a very real component that should be included. But let's just be wise about this. That needs to, in real life, be something that's pretend. You can say that the kill strip contains, I don't know, 1,2,3 tetrachloride, if that's an actual pesticide or something. In the narrative, it should discuss that, but we're not actually going to utilize that chemical in the kill strip. The kill strip needs to be present. It needs to be identifiable in their prototype, but no actual harmful chemical. I don't care if you want to put Kool-Aid on a piece of cotton and say that's our kill strip, but no actual hazardous or flammable material should be utilized as that neutralizing component in the prototype. But in the narrative, you want your students to realistically identify in real life what would that pesticide substance be if it's going to be a pesticide. Okay. Now, this is something that I've since realized I've omitted, and I can throw in here. Aside from the chemical flammable aspect of things, if the killing apparatus is going to be some type of mechanical system, for instance, spinning blades or something like that, again, there's some vagueness to this, but we want these to be safe working prototypes. So putting a blender motor in this thing with a lot of sharp blades whizzing around, again, we can make believe and we can pretend that something is the way it is in the prototype. That can be addressed in the narrative as to what it would be in real life. But for these prototypes, nothing that is a true safety concern to people should be utilized in these prototypes. So I hope that's making sense to everybody. Please translate that to your students. If they're going to make some kind of spotted lanternfly blender or Cuisinart, no actual spinning razor blades should be utilized in any of these designs. Okay. And this is an extremely important note that I give the benefit of the doubt, but I knew I should probably throw in here. Under no circumstances do we want you to bring, or transport spotted lanternflies of any life stage or their eggs from your home school up to Center County. That goes hand in hand with good protocol in the fight against spotted lanternflies. So if they want to do, and I encourage them to do, some level of experimentation, if at all possible, with their prototypes. But under no circumstances do we want any kind of lanternfly, dead or alive, brought along up here for the judging in June. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Also, from my spotted lanternfly extension experts. They have passed along some resources and some literature on the spotted lanternfly and the efforts to stop them. Those links are included in this document as well. They have shared with me others. All are already public record, and you could probably identify them and find them by just doing a simple Google search for such documents through Penn State Extension, also utilizing spotted lanternfly as a key search term. But there's 3 documents to help your students get started with their research, with the research component of this challenge. And that about covers everything that I wanted to highlight in that document. I just kind of wanted to go through that with you and give a little bit more insight on some of those items. But that is really all that I have to talk about. I am now most interested in what questions do you have that I can answer for you. And I gave everybody panelist status, so you should be able to unmute yourself and ask those questions, or you can type them into the chat box if you have any questions about anything I didn't cover already. Oh, before that, 2 things popped into my head, that big things I forgot. So we have funding available, as the advertisement said, and it's actually fairly substantial funding that I have, and it is available that we can distribute out to the teams to use for startup materials, tools, equipment, whatever it is your students will need to help them succeed in this challenge and produce a real high quality prototype meeting this challenge prompt. I am not at liberty to disclose at this point how much funding, because again, that's the big part of the intent to participate document, is I need to get a feel for how many teams want to enter this so that I can realistically determine what the appropriate amount that I can dole out per team is. And there will be an application process, but I'm viewing that as less of a control on the valve of funding, and more of giving your students an opportunity to experience putting together a proposal or a request for funding for something. Again, another realistic life experience that will be good for them to go through requesting that funding. So as soon as this Friday comes and I get a real good feel for how many teams are entering this challenge program, I will provide more information directly to all of those teams that have identified that want to participate, as far as what kind of funding is available and what the process will be for them to get it. But again, it's going to be a substantial amount of money. And point number 2 that I forgot is for the first and second place team, or the first and second place winners of this challenge program. I'm working with external partners to secure funding, and I can fairly safely go on record and say that we're looking at $400 as the first place prize and $200 for the second place prize for the first and second place winning team of the challenge. And that is, again, working with external sponsors and industry to secure that. Okay, now I think that is everything that I know I wanted to kind of put out there. I see Carly has a question. Do team members have to be identified with the intent, and can they change if one were to drop out? Yes. Yes, I ask just because in that Google form, if you have not looked at it yet. I do ask, if you're going to be entering multiple teams, that you identify which students are with which team, just because that information is going to be needed down the road. So rather than trace you down and ask you for information again later, I'm trying to kill as many birds with one stone with this one contact point. So if you can identify which students will be on which team, that would be fantastic. And if that changes, for instance, you have 3 teams of 4, and 2 people drop out of the one team, that's fine, because again, you can have a team of 2, you can have a team of 3, you can have a team of 4, and you can have a student enter individually if they want to. I discourage that, but that still is an option. The most important piece for me is how many teams, whether that be an individual or a group of 2, 3, or 4, how many teams and how many different entries can I expect? Again, from that budgetary standpoint, as well as the space that we're going to need to accommodate the prototype entries in June. So does that answer your question, Carly? Okay, perfect. What other questions are there out there? I'm sure there's something that I did not include in the rules and in eligibility, or that I didn't touch upon today. So what are you wondering out there that I have not answered? I can tell you at this point we have 4 teams. Actually, scratch that. We have 4 schools that have entered teams. Some of those schools have entered more than one team. So I believe total we're at about 5 teams total already. And I've had numerous people reach out to me, about this webinar, saying that, they have students interested. They're going to, they just haven't filled the form out yet, but they can't make the webinar. Is the webinar going to be recorded? Yes, it is. So this is, I'm pleased sitting at Tuesday afternoon, the week that these intents to participate are due. I'm pleased with the response that we've been receiving. I think this program is going to take off. So, and I'm excited to see all of you on here today, which shows me that you have students interested, or you're interested in getting some of your students into this. So this is moving along quite nicely. I'm very pleased. Any other questions? Does anybody have a question that is unable to unmute themselves? See, let's make sure I haven't missed any questions.
For those listening, I would encourage you to think about sharing this opportunity with the other teachers and career tech educators and administrators in your building. I can tell you that I think it's a very novel, innovative approach of applied STEM instruction utilizing current technology in an agri-science context that really would excite a school administrator for application. So don't be afraid to share with them what you're doing, because I bet you they might even find more resources, support, or help on your engagement with the young people about this. This is somewhat similar to like the robotics challenge we hear about, where people are creating and building and designing, and it really fires folks up. So this is a really neat thing.
Yes, and on that note, we do have one school that reached out to me that has already looking at creating a blended team, working in conjunction with their technology education program. So again, that's one of the goals of this. I want that cross collaboration occurring, and I encourage it. So yeah, reach out, spread the word. This is kind of the spearhead of ag education moving forward in this new direction. Dave, you unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
Yeah, a couple of things. Are you going to cap it at the number of teams available, or you're going to accept?
At this point, with the space that we are looking at holding this in on campus, at this point, seeing the responses that I've had, I see no need to cap it. From a budget standpoint and a space standpoint, we can accommodate everything that everybody that has completed the intent to participate already, as well as what I anticipate still coming based on folks that have reached out to me directly. So no, not at this point.
Do they have to be FFA members?
Nope. Non-FFA, non-ag. It could be, it could be a group, a team of kids from a science class in your district.
Today was the first I even got to see it on the flyer. And you know where I'm coming from as far as a district I am.
Yeah.
And we're semester about. So I'm on the fence here on what to do because I'm going to be getting a new group of kids. And I'm also thinking, just as you has suggested, maybe reaching across the aisle to our sister building, which is attached to us, and seeing if there's some interest through their STEM program over there as well. So I'm kind of like Carly, what the first thing is, do we really have to have names yet? Our semester switches here in the 11th of January. So I'm thinking about at least putting a name and just putting 4 names on it, but I won't have a true representation of whether we're going to move forward with it. So, I know you're looking at it as a budget standpoint, and if I decide to, I don't want to use the words bail on you, but then that may just give some other schools some more money to deal with. I'm not going to leave you hanging until the very last minute. You all know we didn't do anything with it, but.
Right. My suggestion to you, Dave, is, first of all, I'd like to have names of team members, but that's not a huge deal for me at this point. So if you would like to, move forward with this, and you kind of want to, so to speak, reserve your spot in this program, fill out that Google form for one team from Franklin Career Tech Center. And if you want to, if you need more time to fill that team out and then have discussions, like you said, with the magnet program, and you end up wanting to do 2 students from your program and 2 students from the magnet school be your team of 4, that's perfectly fine. You can get that information to me later. I'd hate to see you miss out on doing this because you're afraid of leaving me hanging with not having names. So if you're pretty confident that, I understand you've got a change of group coming in, but if you're pretty confident that this is something that you would like to see a team from Franklin Career Tech Center do, reserve a spot, put a team of 4 in there, worry about filling the names of it in later. That's fine. It's just in order for everything else in the timeline to progress accordingly, it's by this Friday, I'd just like to have a pretty concrete feel of how many teams I can expect in this. So
awesome. Okay.
That's my suggestion to you. Don't miss out because you can't give me names.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great question. Anybody else in a scenario like that? Kelly, do you have a new group of students coming in? I don't know if Kelly can hear me. Diana, you have a question?
No question, just listening.
Oh, I just saw the green box move down to you. I didn't know if you were speaking or not. Does this sound good? Everybody comfortable with what's happening? I didn't miss anything. I'm not leaving anything major out.
I think
Okay.
it's a great idea. It'll be exciting to see what happens.
Yes, likewise. Thank you, Diana. All right. Well, that's all that I had to cover. I will stay on until everybody is gone. If there's anything you'd like to discuss regarding this privately, I will stay on with you. But other than that, that's all I had, and I'm looking forward to your entries. Any other questions? Feel free to reach out to me at any time. JTS250@psu.edu.
One more thing, John. You got it listed as homeowner and commercial. If the same team has two different concepts for obviously two different modes of commercial, is going to be totally different than what
Right.
residential could be.
Right.
So
And
would they enter two prototypes and two of everything?
well,
Is that acceptable?
on that note, I don't know exactly. Yeah, there it is. So they for something that they design commercially that could be fairly substantial and large. I already said it could be scaled down just for the sake of bringing it to the competition.
Right.
It is also acceptable to design something that, for homeowner use can be actually manufactured on a smaller scale, but for commercial use, just simply made bigger. That's an acceptable thing to do as well. And again, that would be something that we would need to see explained out in the narrative. As far as doing a one or the other, I'd like to only see one entry per team.
Okay.
So if they could choose, if they're going to just do exclusively a homeowner type prototype or a commercial prototype, to choose one or the other and design accordingly for that. But it is acceptable to say, this is our design. For home use, you make it small. For commercial use, you make it big, and kill both of them. But I'd still only like to see one entry per team.
Okay. And this just kind of flew into my head as we're sitting here talking about it.
Sure.
Are you going to base your judging criteria on what? Because I mean, to me, and again, I'm just sitting here thinking in my head's going a million miles a minute. I could see someone having a awesome homeowner use, and then the other team have like the best thing since sliced bread for commercial applicators setting, and you're looking at two totally different markets. I understand what you're saying, a big version versus a smaller version, but I could almost see this broken into two categories depending on the interest that you have here.
That's a great point. Let me sit on that and let me talk to my extension folks who, along with some industry folks, are going to actually be the ones doing the evaluating, and get their feedback on that point. And then any change to this protocol or these rules and eligibility, I will contact again, and that's another real need for having that intent to participate, because pretty much after Friday, I'm only going to be communicating out to the folks that are on that list.
Right.
And any change pertaining to that great point you just brought up, I will communicate that out directly to the folks that are signed up with the intent to participate. Great suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just using your example of you're pulling something behind the trailer. Well, obviously, you're not going to have anything like that for homeowner use, but then, is a homeowner use going to be something that you would strap on or use on every tree in the orchard, which could go both ways. But that's my only reason for bringing up those points. Nothing to
Right.
make your life
Absolutely.
more miserable. Just
Nope. That's part of what this webinar's purpose is as well. Is this came about based off of seeing some other states doing things similar. But I came up with this from the ground up, basically. So this is a good point, or another goal of this is what did I miss? Where are the holes in this program? So thank you for identifying that. Absolutely. All right. Kelly, were you able to hear us? All right. Well, if